coming off that, staying on the same topic of being South Asian, do you feel like you've had to work harder because of your ethnicity in the music industry?
You know, a teacher of mine told me that it never mattered what sort of race you were. If you could play, you could play.
Mm.
Sometimes I hear that's not always the case. And whether it's like race or gender, I feel like in general, sometimes you have to prove a point bigger than your peers and your colleagues. Me being South Asian and me being one of the only South Asians at times, I definitely felt like there was pressure on me, knowing that people had preconceived notions of us, that we came from a background where everyone was a doctor or an engineer or a businessman. And, here I am being a violist. So I always put that, it was more maybe pressure I put on myself, that as the only South Asian in this circle, I wanted to prove that I had what it took to be just as good as people who may have started viola younger than I at the time,
Yeah.
or people who really had true support from the very, very beginning, and not that it kind of wavered. My parents have always been supportive, but I do remember at one point when medicine was still on the horizon that I was told by my family members that you will have to make a sacrifice and probably stop playing viola as much as you are playing it now. And that was something that never sat well with me. So I just felt like I had to prove a point that I was good in my own right, and that even though I didn't go to music school for undergrad, that I had just as much good training as the conservatory students that were in my master's degree, and that even though I was lacking in a few things, I was willing to learn what I needed to learn, and I wasn't going to, shy away from anyone's opinion. Yes, there were things maybe I didn't like learning initially, but as I went through the program and even left my program, I'm speaking specifically about my master's, I ended up appreciating everything. I definitely felt that I had to maybe prove a point a little bit more than my colleagues. And heritage had to deal with it, but also because of the background I had, that I guess my heritage did contribute to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that's getting better in the industry or it's getting worse?
So, in the light of last year's sort of civil rights paradigm shift, with Black Lives Matter, and just in general, what you're seeing about, like, the how I think May is finishing up Asian American, like, Pacific Islander awareness, and it's I began to see a lot more, like, musicians of color, performers of color take the stage. And that was really great for me. I just this year got added to a Facebook group called South Asians in Western Classical Music. And I just found out that there were so many more people like me pursuing this professionally. I did have peers in high school and middle school that were South Asian that, did music so it looked good on a college application, and they just never touched their instruments afterwards. But it's nice to see that, hey, there are people like me pursuing this professionally, and they're no longer in the shadows. Like, I always felt like I was in the shadows, and now I'm finding more people like me to talk to. And I would often reach out to them saying, hey, how do you as a South Asian deal with, your cultural community, with what you do, or how you sort of go into the classical world as a South Asian and deal with that. And more I'm finding that level of support, and it's just been like a nice welcoming hug. And I'm definitely happy about that. Sometimes I felt kind of cool that I was the token only South Asian, because, oh, I look at me, I'm special. But at the same time, it begins to rub off on you that, hey, I want more people like me that I can connect with, just like I found people like me in medicine and engineering. And now I'm seeing that. And because the world has gotten smaller with all these different methods of communication, you know everyone's a message away or an email away, and I think that's great.
Yeah, I think
I
that's
think it's
brilliant as well.
fantastic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because without realizing as well, you could be a role model for so many people. Like you necessarily might not have seen someone from your background going into that industry, but even people might see your Instagram or see you on YouTube and say to their mum or dad that's pushing them into more academic route, saying, "Look, Rizwan Jagani is doing it, so he's doing successfully. What's there stopping me to do it?" So that must be a great feeling as well.
A lot of people have told me that, if I can't convince the older generation that I'm doing something well, I can at least have some influence on the younger generation. That, hey, it doesn't matter if you're doing medicine or music. You know, do what you're doing, do it really well, and do it so it fulfills your soul, not just, impresses everybody around you or, brings in a paycheck. Because there are days where, you'll be having like you won't feel like getting out of bed and doing what you're doing. But you know the in what career is it a perfect world? Everybody has that. And I think, for the younger generation, I always tell people, like, like, continue it. If your heart and soul is in it, do it, and do it really, really well. Like, seek out good education, go watch good performers, listen to good examples of what you're hoping to achieve.